I have physical, documented medical proof that I was abducted by extraterrestrials and, oh God, I can't believe I'm actually saying this out loud, you know? Like, everyone's always like, where's the proof? Where's the evidence? And I'm like, well, here it is. But also, I don't know, maybe you won't believe me anyway, which is fine. Like, take it or leave it, right? Now I know what you're thinking. Oh my God, another alien abduction story from some random person on the internet. But here's the thing, and this is what most people don't understand. I'm not just some crazy person making wild claims for attention. I mean, I guess I could be crazy, who knows? But I have medical documentation from multiple doctors, physical evidence, independent witnesses. Actually, wait, let me back up because, like, you can't just jump into an alien abduction story without understanding who I am, right? And I'm getting ahead of myself again, which I always do. I've been psychic since I was literally 2 years old, growing up in Sacramento, California. My parents noticed I was seeing and talking to things they couldn't see or perceive. I have an older brother who's about a year older than me, and there was this really stark difference between us. Like, he was normal, you know? And I was the weird kid pointing at empty corners, having full conversations with, I don't know what they were, invisible beings, angels, ghosts. Actually, I was raised Catholic, so for me, I always thought I was talking to God or angels. That's what they teach you. If you're talking to something that feels loving and you can't see it, it must be divine, right? It's either God or the devil, and I really felt like it was God. So that's how I grew up understanding my abilities, which is funny because, like, the Catholic Church and psychic abilities don't really go together, but whatever. I was seeing ghosts and spirits walking around all the time, sometimes in public places, sometimes at my friends' houses, and I would just point it out, you know? I didn't realize my friends weren't seeing what I was seeing until I was probably around 10 years old. And like, oh my God, that was devastating. I felt so outcasted, so weird. Kids at school called me a liar constantly, saying I was just making stuff up for attention. And so that's when I really started to shut down my abilities because I just wanted to fit in. I just wanted to be normal, you know? So I went really physical. Anything athletic, sports oriented. Like, in order to get away from the metaphysical, I went super physical. Basketball, track, soccer, whatever. And from 10 to around 14, I totally lost track of my abilities. I fit in, I made friends, but oh God, I started to feel really disconnected and alone and super anxious, even depressed. That's when I started searching outside of myself. I went to every authority figure I could find, my friends' parents, counselors, therapists. I even went to a priest at Saintson. What's the point of everything? And every single time I was met with these disappointing answers like, well, one day you'll grow up and go to school and get a good job and settle down and have kids and you'll be happy. To me, that wasn't happiness. Mary's Cathedral in Sacramento to ask, what's the meaning of life? That was prison. Like, that can't be it, right? So at 16, actually, I think I was still 15, but close to 16. When I was really deep into life contemplations and disappointment, my dad asked me if I wanted to try a past life regression. There has to be more than this suburban nightmare they're describing. I was really surprised that no one else was questioning outside of these lines we were taught, you know? Now he's an engineer, he's Catholic, you really don't put those things together. But he was open-minded and had done a past life regression course back in the day, which is so random for an engineer, right? So I said, yeah, I mean, at this point, I'll try anything. And I was desperate, honestly. And in about an hour and a half, we went into 5 different lifetimes. Every lifetime really taught me that I was here to gain access to information through other realms and then present that information to help other people, which is exactly what I'm doing right now, actually, talking to you about this alien stuff. 2 things became clear to me. 1, reincarnation is real, and thank God I'm not just 16 because I don't feel it. And 2, time is an illusion. Like, how is it possible for me at 16 years old to go through life and death 5 times in an hour and a half? If this is possible, if this is real, why isn't this headline news? I mean, it really blew my mind. So that was my first real reawakening. I copied my dad's past life regression notes and went off to the University of Oregon in Eugene 2 years later. I double majored in political science and communications because I wanted to be a lawyer or politician. But that's how I made friends. I would take random people from my classes and ask if they believed in reincarnation, then take them into deep trance states and journey them through different lifetimes, you know? I thought I could change the system from the inside, only to realize, yeah, that's not how you change the system. You've got to be outside of it. I was doing deep trance meditation, seeing ghosts and spirits again, experiencing auras and energies, doing out-of-body experiences, lucid dreaming, astral travel, remote viewing, the whole thing. Which sounds so weird now that I'm saying it out loud. Like, who does that? But at this point, all my abilities came back online. My name is Imogen Parker, by the way, and I'm 34 years old now, living in Portland, Oregon. But back then, at 18, if you had asked me if aliens were real, I would have said for sure. I mean, we'd be pretty dumb to think we're the only intelligent life in the universe. But I also thought, like, why would they bother with us? We're essentially a caveman species. Why would advanced beings waste their time coming here? That was my stance, and I never really gave it a second thought until, God, this is where it gets crazy. I went to this 10-day silent meditation retreat called Vipassana. It was at the Crestone Mountain Zen Center, about 15 miles south of Crestone, Colorado. Actually, wait, it might have been north. I always mix up directions. Anyway, it was something I'd experienced in a past life and wanted to re-experience in this lifetime, which probably sounds insane to most people. So there I was on October 15th, 2011. I remember the date because it was the night my life completely changed, in this silent meditation retreat in the middle of the mountains. Like, no one's around, you can't talk to anyone. What a perfect place to abduct a human, right? Though I didn't think that at the time. On the second night of this retreat, I was lying in bed and got woken up around 3 a.m. by, I don't know what. I only know the time because when I came back, I turned on my phone and it was about 33. So the whole experience was about 30 minutes, but it felt like hours. You know how when you're in a new place and you wake up and don't realize where you are? That was the vibe. I got woken up and at the time I thought it was my boyfriend Tyler who had somehow come into the room because I saw someone hovering over me. Just this big head hovering over me. I remember saying out loud, "Tyler, is that you? What are you doing here? Where am I?" And then, God, this is where it gets really weird. Just like that, I was being pulled from my bed and I couldn't move. I couldn't say anything. I was completely paralyzed, but my eyes were open and I could see everything and think very clearly. Like I was fully awake but paralyzed, which is the most terrifying feeling ever. There were 3 beings. They were quite tall, maybe 6.5 to 7 feet, super thin and white, almost transparent white. Everything was elongated. Arms, torso, fingers. There was one on my left leg, one on my left arm, and one on my right arm. That's how they were carrying me out of the room, like I was a piece of furniture or something. I specifically remember looking down at my feet and seeing my right foot dangling with one sock that had fallen off in the night. I remember noticing that, such a weird detail to focus on when you're being abducted by aliens, but that's what my brain latched onto, you know? They took me into the hallway of the meditation retreat. The only part I don't recall fully is how we got from the hallway up to their ship. You assume, right, like in an abduction experience, you assume you're floating up through the ceiling somehow, but there was none of that. I don't know if we teleported or what. 1 second we were in the hallway, next second we were in their ship. I was sitting in this metal chair and it was bizarre. Small room, I couldn't turn my head, but I could open my eyes and look around. In front of me were maybe 6 or 7 of these beings, all super tall. I didn't see clothing. It was almost like I could see their paper-thin, transparent skin. They had small eyes, not many facial features. Some had white, straggly hair. They were just watching, like observers at a science experiment. Out of my right periphery, I could see a machine beside me. There was a being next to it that felt like a doctor. You know how you can just sense someone's role? Slowly, I saw this machine. It looks like a metal box with a needle-like device extending from it. I watched this needle-like thing move toward me, getting thinner as it got closer, without feeling anything. And this is the weirdest part. I knew it went into the base of my neck, right at the C7 vertebra. How do I know it was C7? I don't know, I just knew somehow. The feeling I got there was no telepathic conversation, which I was used to from other spiritual experiences. Instead, it was the most amount of fear I'd ever felt. But it was weird because I remember thinking, this is not my own fear. It didn't feel like mine. It felt chemically induced, artificial, like they were pumping fear into me to keep me compliant or something. Then that was it. Same thing. I have no idea how I got from the chair back to my bed. Probably about 30 minutes total, but time felt so weird. I was paralyzed for another 20 to 30 minutes after they put me back, just laying there processing everything. Oh my God, was this a dream? Was it real? Did this really happen? But I couldn't move. Finally, I could move slowly, sat up in bed, went to touch the base of my neck, and there was a small puncture wound that was bleeding. I'm actually grateful for that bleeding because that was my only physical proof that anything happened to me that night, you know? That's when I turned on my phone 3045 or whatever. I remember Googling abduction experiences Colorado because I'm looking for anything else. This was 2011. Not many people were talking about this stuff openly. I found nothing useful. I contemplated leaving the meditation retreat because I'm like, are they going to abduct me every single night? Who do I talk to about this? How crazy am I going to sound? So I ended up, this is embarrassing, stealing a butter knife from the kitchen to defend myself. It wasn't even defense, it was more like if I could nick them and get some alien blood to take to a laboratory or something, like that was going to work. But they never came back. I actually had a great rest of my retreat, which is weird. What followed was this feeling of being watched. This really intense, uncanny feeling like they were floating 5 feet behind me for at least a month. As a remote viewer who was meditating and getting out of my body regularly, part of me wondered if they were body snatchers waiting for me to leave my body so they could take over. So I shut down all my spiritual practices completely, which sucked. 2 weeks later, back in Eugene, I went to see a doctor at Oregon Health and Science University. I'm not going to tell you I got abducted by aliens, but please examine this. She looked at the wound site and said, "Oh wow, you've got unusual scar tissue formation along your cervical spine, particularly around C7. I'm like, okay, but do you see a device? I said, look, something's going on with this puncture wound. A chip? Am I chipped? She couldn't find anything technological but confirmed the unusual tissue formation and recommended I see a specialist. About a month later, March 2012, I went to a medical medium in Denver. I didn't believe in medical mediums. I'm very skeptical, very logical, despite all this crazy stuff happening to me. But I went and didn't tell her anything. I said, just scan me. I don't know what you do, but look into my body. She took 2 seconds and said, oh, you've been chipped. You have an implant at the base of your neck. I was shocked. She said it was organic material but oddly conscious, with little grippers attached to my spinal cord. It was monitoring my nervous system and connected to my crown chakra. She said the beings were curious because I had such a bright aura, such high frequency. They wanted to track and monitor what I was doing to maintain that frequency. She offered to remove it energetically. I was expecting tools or something, but she just did energy work. I was so skeptical. Like, sure, you removed the alien chip with your hands. She said, I disconnected it from your soul, your astral body. You might get weird drainage from the puncture site. Still skeptical, I walked away but immediately felt grounded again. That watched feeling disappeared completely. Over 5 or 6 months, that puncture wound at the base of my neck drained this dark, greenish-black liquid consistently. Pretty hard to fake that, you know? But here's where it gets. I don't even know how to explain this. Years later, when I started doing professional remote viewing, oh wait, I should explain what that is. So I just get into this really deep meditation, you know? And then I can just go places with my mind. I don't know how to explain it, it just happens. When I went to that meditation center location astrally, because I was curious about why they chose that place, I could see there was Buckley Air Force Base about 6 miles southeast of Crestone. I'll be sitting in my living room and suddenly I'm floating through walls and corridors and seeing stuff that's happening miles away. And when I looked at that base, oh my god, I could see underground levels, corridor systems, these containment units. There were beings there, tall whites like the ones who took me, greys, even some reptilian species working alongside human military personnel. Oh my god, it was insane. But here's where it gets crazy. They have remote viewer security. I got caught. There was this big military remote viewer who looked at me and said, "What are you doing here?" I'd never been seen as a remote viewer before. He actually kicked me out, pushed me 150 feet up in the air, which was terrifying. Of course, I went back because I'm stubborn. I cloaked my astral body using invisibility techniques. Don't ask me how I know how to do that, I just do. And followed his etheric cord back to his physical location. Found this room with tiny desks, like university study stations. 2 men in military fatigues were sitting back in chairs with their heads down, etheric cords extending from them. Remote viewer security guards. I'd been to multiple underground facilities through remote viewing. One, somewhere in Kansas. I think it was Kansas, maybe Nebraska. I stumbled across a cloning facility. Massive tubes with people in them, many familiar faces, celebrities. Usually 2 or 3 of each individual in full-grown state. That was about 10 years ago when I first started getting out of my body systematically, and let me tell you, that messed me up for weeks. What I realized from the cloning facility is they're just puppets, you know? Physical, biological puppets with a whole activation process. Major political players, celebrities, they're slaves keeping us distracted while the real stuff happens underground. It's like, stop watching the news. Stop following people who may be distracting you from your evolution. Big celebrations like the Super Bowl, massive concerts. There's dark satanic Illuminati symbolism embedded throughout. Once you start questioning the nature of reality, you wake up to how much is hidden in plain sight. But let's get back to, wait, where was I? Oh right, the good guys. About 3 months after my abduction, I finally felt comfortable doing spiritual practice again. That's when I was greeted by a completely different set of extraterrestrial beings who called themselves the Galactic Federation of Light. They're essentially an organization of extraterrestrials whose main mission is unity unifying and aligning with universal laws. When I first met them, I was pissed because I was studying global politics, and suddenly I'm meeting off-world beings telling me they're like universal police. I was disappointed, thinking it doesn't get better even in space. But they explained their role. They're the good guys ensuring advanced civilizations don't take advantage of smaller ones. They enforce karmic laws through democratic council systems, which sounds boring, but is actually pretty important. What I talk to them about mostly is planet Earth, humanity, our trajectory. Every 3 to 6 months, I'll have a human fit, you know? I'll astral project over there and yell at them like, guys, come on, you see what they're doing. Why aren't you stopping this? Time and again, they tell me this is part of the process, the great unveiling. Humanity can't wake up without questioning current predicaments. We've got to get worse before it gets better. We're in this dark night of the soul collectively before we rise to the highest frequency. That's where solar flares come in. We're in solar maximum right now. Solar flares are electromagnetic frequencies hitting Earth, hitting us. We're electromagnetic beings, so of course they're shifting us, raising our frequency. The spiritual community talks about ascending to the 5th dimension, like going on a fluffy cloud to the next planet. It's not like that. Yeah, we're ascending, shifting, moving our consciousness, but it's a perception shift. Same 4 walls, same environment, but everything is different. One of their biggest messages is empowerment. We're no longer here to lead and follow. We're here to become our own leaders. AI development is bringing us into consciousness shift because we're getting to where we can't trust what we see or hear online. When everyone's confused, there's only one way to go within ourselves. This whole empowerment piece is crucial. I'm a conduit, but I'm not the only one and don't know everything. My biggest thing is everyone can make their own connections. My dream is to be out of a job because everyone's creating connections to spirit guides, higher dimensional beings. I'm seeing it happen. It's wild how many people are making those connections these days. But here's where it gets even more interesting. About 6 months after my initial abduction, I had another encounter that was completely different. I was doing my evening meditation in my apartment in Eugene when I felt this familiar energy. But instead of fear, I felt this incredible love and warmth. 3 beings materialized in my room, not the tall whites from before, but these beautiful, luminescent beings with bluish skin and the most compassionate eyes I'd ever seen. They introduced themselves telepathically as Arcturian Healing Council members. They told me they were there to repair the damage done by the first encounter, to restore my energetic integrity. One of them placed their hand over the base of my neck, right where the implant had been, and I felt this warm, tingling sensation. They explained that sometimes we need to experience the shadow to fully appreciate the light. My negative abduction opened me up to receiving their healing. It was like a cosmic initiation, you know? They gave me tools for discernment, how to tell the difference between good and bad contact. The healing session lasted about 2 hours. When it was over, that lingering fear energy from the first abduction was completely gone. They left me with meditation techniques to contact them when I needed guidance. Over the years, I've used these techniques countless times. They've helped me remote view more safely, protected me during astral travel, and given me information about global events before they happen. Like, oh my god, some of the things they've shown me about what's coming is both terrifying and exciting. But here's what they want everyone to understand. We're not victims in this process. We're active participants. Every meditation session, every act of kindness, every moment of choosing love over fear contributes to this shift. We're literally co-creating the new reality through our collective consciousness. You know what's wild? I never thought I'd be able to talk about this stuff publicly. 10 years ago, I thought I'd take these experiences to my grave. But here we are, and disclosure is happening whether the powers that be want it or not. People are waking up. They're sharing their stories. They're demanding truth. The old paradigm of secrecy and control is crumbling. We're moving into an era of transparency and empowerment. And honestly, it's about time. So what do you do with all this information? First, use your discernment. Don't just believe everything I've told you. Research, investigate, have your own experiences. Second, if this resonates with you, start preparing yourself for contact. Raise your vibration, develop your psychic abilities. Third, and this is really important, don't try to convince skeptics. Focus on connecting with other open-minded individuals. We're stronger together than we are alone. The question isn't whether this is real anymore. The evidence is overwhelming. The question is, are you ready to expand your understanding of reality? Are you ready to step into your role as a cosmic citizen? Because oh my god, we are so much more than we've been told. We're multi-dimensional beings with incredible abilities and a cosmic destiny. And it's time we start acting like it, you know? That's my alien abduction story with proof, with evidence, with hope for humanity's future. We are not alone. We never have been. and we're finally ready to step into our cosmic inheritance. What a time to be alive, right? I mean, seriously, what a time to be alive.